Cruising things on here, final segment with Locked On UCLA. How can the Bruins find a way to be successful here in 2025 Week 1 against Devon Dampier? Well, there is a clear bugaboo for Devon Dampier, at least in his final year in a New Mexico Lobo uniform, all right? No, so it's not going to be the same New Mexico team a year ago coming in to UCLA on Week 3 because their quarterback is starting for Utah in Week 1, and they took their offensive coordinator with them, so this is what the Bruins get to see when it comes to Devon Dampier. All right, for Devon, had 9 games played, 64 passes attempted in his freshman year at New Mexico, 6 touchdowns, a 62% completion percentage, long of about like 71 yards in a game. In his sophomore year, where he started 12 games, had a 58% completion percentage, just a little under 2,800 yards, 12 touchdown passes, but 12 interceptions, passed for 230 yards a game. You're like, all right, that might be a low total for a quarterback, but that's because Dampier is a dynamic dual threat QB. Rushed for nearly 100 yards a game on the grounds. Nearly 100 yards per game on the ground as a starting quarterback. Now, we've seen this more and more in this up-tempo, fun dual threat QB age, starting with Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton, Tim Tebow in different ways in the last 2 decades. But Dampier as a 5'10 QB, shorter, stockier, as his head coach Kyle Whittingham calls him, and 19 touchdowns on the ground a year ago. 19. But he had 12 touchdowns passing and 12 interceptions, all right? So for UCLA, a revamped secondary is going to need to make plays. 12 INTs a year ago. So if the Bruins can get the Utes into third and long situations, or maybe it's not a third and long situation, and for 1 play or 2 plays, it might not be a dialed up run play or a Dampier scramble. This is where the UCLA secondary under Coach Me with Akika Malloy have to be working on winning the ball in the air, high pointing the ball and picking it off, not just batting it down, not just a pass defended, truly intercepting the ball. This is one of those games where if UCLA wanted 2 to 3 picks because it's Week 1, you got to go get it. All right, you have to go earn this game because I still think even if Dampier throws a pick or 2, you're going to have to win this in a high-scoring fashion. I do not think the Bruins can keep them off the board a lot. Dampier, in my mind, I'm not sure if this is a full right comparison. Kind of reminds me of the matchup for Damon Williams Jr. for Washington in 2024 when they played the Bruins. Now, very different. UCLA a little different on the defensive line, very different with their linebacking core. Can the Bruins contain Dampier enough on the ground to force him to throw it 1 to 2 picks? If UCLA does not force an INT, at least 1 in this game, I don't see how they win it. I really don't. You have to force a quarterback in Week 1 wearing a new uniform into INTs. It's going to come down to which side, which new quarterback in a new uniform, in a new spot, in a big-time game, as late as it might be on the West Coast, makes more mistakes. Is Nico going to have a check down problem? Is he going to run out of bounds? Or is he going to use that stocky Cam Newton-like frame and turn himself into a 300-yard passer with 3 touchdowns? Is this going to be a game where, for Devon Dampier in a Utah uniform, he makes the UCLA defense look like it did in late 2024 in a very winnable game against Washington? Absolutely winnable game against the Huskies up in Seattle in late 2024 that cost the Bruins a chance at going to a bowl game because he scrambled, escaped the pressure, and made play after play, despite what I thought was a solid UCLA performance, but the worst game of the year because it cost them. And it put a lot of pressure on the USC game just to win it, to even have a shot at a bowl game. Now I think Akika Malloy can hopefully have game plan all offseason, get this fall camp ready to the first full week of practice on game week to getting this dual threat ability going. All right. Now, it's one thing if you're going ones against ones, it's different to see a 6'6 QB versus a 5'10 QB. But can the Bruins have enough strength up front and containment on the outside that Dampier will be forced to throw the ball into harm's way multiple times? That's really what this game comes down to for UCLA if the offense is to perform as expected, at least of myself, placing high expectations on the genius of Tino Sinceri or Nico Imalayaba. You can bookmark this and make me go back to it after week 1, after week 5, after week 10, 12, 13, whatever, and we'll still be seeing if I'm talking about this, all right? But for UCLA, the offense has to lead the charge. And when it was expected that the offense was going to lead the charge in 23, it was a young coordinator that came in and led UCLA to a strong season in 2023 in Danton Land. The hope is that 2 years later, it's happening on the offensive side of the ball. And with Ikaika Malloy and with his new pieces, his new tools, they work right away. All right. Is it Key Lawrence? Will be healthy enough? Is it one of the new youngsters like a LaRue Zamorano? Is Cole Martin, Coach Meat's son, ready to rock and roll? One of many new players in the secondary as a corner, safety. What's it going to be? You can list so many different players. At this point, somebody's just got to go out there and make a play. It's not like we have a complete two deep, ready to rock and roll leading into week 1 just yet. All right. So the Bruins need to force turnovers. To win this game, they need to force a turnover. To make me feel comfortable about winning this game, the Bruins need to force at least 2 for a quarterback that threw an average of 1 interception per game last year. 12 picks in 12 games and 12 starts. So that means if those numbers carry over to Utah, that UCLA should have an opportunity for at least 1 to 2 picks and make that play. Now, will they be a little more conservative in the play calling and use the legs of Dampier to avoid that with now a second-year starter for Dampier under his offensive coordinator? Possibly could be the case. This is where the secondary needs to stamp up. The most heavily targeted spot the UCLA Bruins went after in the transfer portal, went after a lot in flipping guys late with Coach Meat's recruiting ability. They just absolutely went to town on overhauling what they had in the secondary. And can they do that and actually make plays week 1? That will determine if UCLA wins. The Big Ten has won in the trenches, but it's non-conference. And even if Dampier has some time to throw, maybe 1 or 2 poor throws brought in by the UCLA secondary or even the linebacking room, whoever forces the turnover can make a big difference in this game. That's how you win this game. If not, if Dampier is flawless and does not have a turnover, then I don't trust just yet the defensive line week 1 against a speedy QB to keep him contained, unlike any other QB the UCLA Bruins will face in 2025. But I do believe the Bruins will force a turnover or 2 and lead to an exciting shootout win over Utah in week 1. But that remains to be seen. How and why Nico will outperform Devon Dampier, I'm going to talk about that in the next UCLA episode on Locked On UCLA. So like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.